When it comes to the Rothschild family, there's just so much that we know yet don't know. What we can be sure about is that this is one of the richest families in the world. If they were to bring all their fortunes together, they would probably have a net worth ranging in hundreds of billions of dollars. However, one of the family members, Lord Jacob Rothschild, has passed away, leaving behind a very great fortune. But there's just one problem. Who will inherit this fortune? Before we can even answer that question, it would be better if we start from the top. So in today's video, we'll look at who Lord Jacob Rothschild is and who will end up inheriting his billion-dollar fortune. But before we continue, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more celebrity news and gossip. And with that, let's look at who Lord Jacob Rothschild was. Nathaniel Charles Jacob Rothschild was born in Berkshire, England, on April 29, 1936. He's the son of Victor Rothschild, the third Baron Rothschild, and his first wife, Barbara Judith Rothschild. Mr. Rothschild had the chance to study history at Oxford before eventually joining the family bank. He managed to make a name for himself while working at the family bank, proving to be quite a hard worker. Lord Jacob Rothschild was a wealthy financier, a patron of the arts, and a philanthropist who had some very close ties to Israel. When you look at his story, he's mostly famous for breaking the family's fabled banking dynasty at a time when there was a great change in the world of high finance. However, he's no more, having passed away at the age of 87. His death was announced on Monday, February 26, 2024 by the Rothschild Foundation. This is a British charity that he was the chairman of. However, the foundation didn't give any details regarding his death, such as when or where he died. Not even the cause of death is known. And if there's one thing we know about this family, it's that they can be pretty secretive with their affairs. Mr. Rothschild, who was formerly the fourth Baron Rothschild, was descended from Mayer Amschel Rothschild, a coin trader in the Jewish ghetto in Frankfurt. Mayer Amschel Rothschild sent 4 of his 5 sons to Vienna, London, Naples, and Paris, where they were to seek their fortune. This was around the 18th and early 19th centuries. For the better part of the 19th century, the House of Rothschild was the biggest bank in the world. Jonathan Steinberg was an American scholar who wrote in the London Review of Books in 1999 that it was the largest bank by a wide margin. Mr. Steinberg went on to add that the fortune of Nathan Mayer Rothschild, the son who founded the bank's London branch, could be compared to Bill Gates in the world of today. If you were to dig deeper into how the Rothschilds became one of the wealthiest families in the world, you would trace its origins to a decision to finance the British military during the Napoleonic Wars. But regardless of that, the broader dynasty flourished by cementing its family bonds and cultivating what Mr. Steinberg referred to as, quote, everybody who was anybody at the top of European society during this period. It was against this historical backdrop that Jacob Rothschild decided to join the London arm of the family's empire at the N.M. Rothschild & Sons Bank. This was around 1963. Before then, he had been following a route that was familiar to the British elite, going to Eton College for his education and later to Christ Church, Oxford. At that time, London's world of high finance, which was known to be traditionally cautious and clubby, still had 2 decades before it finally shifted toward freewheeling capitalism. And when this happened, it culminated in what became known as the Big Bang of 1986. This brought deregulation to the London Stock Exchange. Furthermore, the British merchant banks in the city, which is just another name for London's financial district, seemed to be dwarfed by the burgeoning financial might of Wall Street. This ended up building pressure for new approaches. One thing that Mr. Rothschild had long favored was merging the London branch of his family's financial empire with another merchant bank, S.G. Warburg. However, the same can't be said about some of the other family members. His plan was greatly opposed by his cousin Everlyn de Rothschild, as well as his own father, Victor. Victor was a scientist and former member of Britain's MI5 domestic intelligence agency. Since his plan wasn't working the way he had hoped and he still wanted the idea to work, he resolved to do the hardest thing possible, break away. So in 1995, Mr. Rothschild said that they have to try to make themselves as much a bank of brains as of money. If you think about it, you'll see that he was challenging a culture of family control and secrecy that had distinguished its dealings from the very beginning. Mr. Steinberg, the scholar, seems to have done some deep research on the family. He wrote that as long ago as 1810, quote, the family policy excluded female descendants and all son-in-laws from any part of the business. To keep it simple, it was strictly immediate family members who were allowed in the business. To enforce this, each of the initial partners had to renounce the rights of his wife to have sight of the accounts and swear to allow only direct male descendants to inherit the shares. In addition to these family laws, anyone who married outside the Rothschilds' Jewish faith was greatly frowned upon. and as a result of this, it was quite common to hear that there was a marriage within the family. About this, Mr. Steinberg wrote, quote, "Of 21 marriages involving descendants of Mayer Amschel between 1824 and 1877, no fewer than 15 were between his direct descendants." Even though the family's rules were less strict by the early 1960s, Mr. Rothschild's proposal to merge with S.G. Warburg collided head-on with tradition. According to Victor and Evelyn de Rothschild, quote, "The preservation of family control took precedence over expansion." This was recorded by the British historian Niall Ferguson. He wrote in his 1998 book, The House of Rothschild, which was a voluminous study of the family. And according to Mr. Ferguson, the clash just represented a serious rift within the English branch of the family. This dispute went on for quite some time, but it was eventually resolved in 1980. This was when the feuding partners agreed that the family bank, N.M. Rothschild & Sons Limited, would operate separately from Mr. Rothschild's breakaway entity, J. Rothschild & Company. For Mr. Rothschild's company, its main assets came to be known by their initials, RIT, which stood for Rothschild Investment Trust. After quite the run, Mr. Rothschild eventually retired as head of RIT Capital Partners in 2019. And by the time he was retiring, his personal wealth, according to Bloomberg's Billionaire Index, had accumulated to an estimated $1 billion. After residing as head of RIT, Mr. Rothschild didn't stop building his legacy and his fortune there. He was involved in a series of ventures, going after everything he'd imagined and hoped for. During his ventures, he had to face some unsuccessful bids, one of the most famous being in 1989. This bid was with other investors where he wanted to take over British American Tobacco for a total of $21 billion. In addition to that, he maintained a wide network of international connections, playing a role as deputy chairman of Rupert Murdoch's Sky Television. He was also an advisor to then Prince Charles. Mr. Rothschild had quite the personality, because even with all this, he was a member of the International Advisory Board of the Blackstone Group, which is a leading private equity group. In '91, he co-founded the J. Rothschild Assurance Group, which is a wealth management company. However, it should be noted that it's since changed its name and is now known as St. James Place. He clearly had a lot going on. However, not all his endeavors were smooth. There were a lot of them that faced controversy. In 2003, the British media released some reports that claimed that Mr. Rothschild had struck a trusteeship with Mikhail Khodorkovsky, a Russian oil tycoon and Putin foe. The deal was that they were to transfer Mr. Khodorkovsky's stake in the Yukos Oil Company to Mr. Rothschild in the event of his arrest. And in October 2003, Mr. Khodorkovsky was arrested and was later exiled. However, when asked about it, Mr. Rothschild never confirmed these reports. In addition to his career as a high-powered financier, Mr. Rothschild also played a very energetic yet pretty secretive role in Israel. He would mostly oversee his family's long-running philanthropic activities as head of the Yad Hanadi Foundation. As decades went by, the Rothschilds quietly sponsored many projects, including some major ones like the construction of Israel's parliament, Supreme Court, and National Library. However, none of them bear the family's name. Mr. Rothschild even told the Jerusalem Report in 2012, quote, "We've tried not to be in the headlines. Our tradition has been we don't shout from the rooftops what we're doing." Now, with the death of the British banking tycoon, there's a very high likelihood of a succession-style battle breaking out between his heirs, all seeking to get a piece of his vast real estate and investment empire. As we've seen, Lord Rothschild founded London-based RIT Capital Management in 1961, which is still one of the UK's largest investment trusts. Not only that, but he was also the head of the British wing of the fabled banking dynasty that dates back to the 18th century. Mr. Rothschild had 4 children with his wife of more than 50 years, Serena Mary Dunn, who died in 2019. The youngest of those children and only son is 52-year-old Nathaniel Rothschild. It was obvious that he would be the next in line to the throne, given some of the family rules. Just like his father, Nate moved effortlessly in the world of high finance, having led investment advisory firm J&R Limited, coal production giant Boomi plc, and Wall Street hedge fund Atticus Capital before it shuttered in 2009. However, the elder Rothschild was known to have a distaste for their heir's apparent playboy lifestyle and rebellious streak, including when he eloped with socialite Annabelle Nielsen in 1994 in Las Vegas. Furthermore, Nathaniel and his father weren't that close, as Nathaniel didn't even invite his father to a second wedding. His older sister Hannah seems to be the frontrunner to take the crown. Unlike her brother, she has a 10% stake in RIT Capital and sits on the board as a non-executive director. Their other siblings, Beth and Emily, have stayed out of the public eye and shielded themselves from taking major roles in Rothschild institutions. So the question is, between Nathaniel and Hannah, who will inherit Lord Rothschild's fortune? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And in the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell.